Okay, hello everybody. It's 1 p.m. Eastern Time, so we're going to get started. Thank you all for logging in and joining us today. This webinar will be recorded and it will be made available to you online within a couple of days. So just keep your eye out for the follow-up email there so you can review it at your convenience. So don't feel like you need to really take notes today. Just kind of sit back and watch. Our intention is to give you an idea of how to get started and all of the gating features, or most of the gating features available in FCS Express. Okay, so if you guys have a question during the course of the webinar, you can enter that into the questions and answer box, which is in the lower right-hand corner of my layout. I'm circling my mouse around it. I don't know if you can see where it says enter a question for staff. You can type in a question there and I will try to answer it in the course of the webinar, or we'll reply to you via the chat window, or if it's more in-depth, we'll reply to you via email. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Kaya Ghosh. I'm a technical applications specialist with FCS Express, and we're going to be talking about gating in FCS Express 7. So let's take a look at what we have on the agenda for today. So we're going to start out just by talking about how to create gates, markers, and quads. And so we're going to obviously talk about how to draw the gates, markers, and quads. We're going to talk about how to apply gates to other plots, how to link markers and quads specifically to gates. Whoops. Sorry about that. And how to make combination gates and a combination gate matrix. So that's really useful for those of you who might be doing more complicated immunophenotyping experiments and you want to see all your double positives and your triple positives and your triple negatives and everything in between. FCS Express can automate that for you. And we're also going to show you how flexible it is to change your gate hierarchy and other gate properties in FCS Express, even after you've created your gates. There's really no need to start over. Then we're going to jump to data-specific gates. And that is a type of gate that's best for when you have multiple samples showing on your layout side by side. So for instance, let's say you have some control samples and some treated samples, and your CD4 gate or whatever downstream gate is different. The position is different for those two groups. You can use data-specific gates to handle that situation. Also, if you just have an individual sample that is sort of an outlier and you need to adjust the gate just for that sample, data-specific gates will help you do just that. Then we'll move on to talk about iteration snapshots, and that is also useful for when you need particular gating positions for a certain sample or for a certain subset of samples. And that is different. It's useful for when your layout is set up to batch process. So rather than having multiple samples showing on your layout simultaneously, let's say you've got 100 samples in your data list and you want to go through the batch process and just iterate your samples through the existing plots on your layout and then send out the results to PowerPoint and PDF. That's what iteration snapshots is good for. Some of you might know that as pause between iterations if you're already schooled in batch processing. So we're not going to go into depth in batch processing on this webinar because it's a little too off topic, and we have a separate webinar and short video for that, but I did want to mention iteration snapshots because it is quite relevant to gating. Okay, and also we're going to talk about, if we have time, so I've put it in gray here, well gates and gate heat maps. So well gates are if you're doing multi-well plate acquisition and you're looking at your data as a heat map, i.e. a multi-well plate in FCS Express, you can create gates on groups of wells in FCS Express and then use those gates downstream just like you would any other gate. So I'm not going to go into depth in heat maps, but I just wanted to show you well gates for the sake of completeness. And we have a new plot type in FCS Express 7 called gate heat maps. And I think if we have time, I'll just show you that very, very briefly because it's a nice way to quickly interrogate your experiment and just see, what's the expression level in a particular parameter across all your samples. Okay, so again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to type those into the questions and answer box. We will be glad to reply to you either verbally, or my colleague Andrea Valle is on the line and he will be able to reply to you via the chat window. Okay, so let's get started. So this is a very simple layout that I've created just to show you from the start, how to create your gates, your markers, and your quads. So let's go to the gating tab. So everything in FCS Express is arranged in a PowerPoint-like interface. So all our gating tools are here on the gating tab. So if I want to create a gate around, this top population here, my granulocytes, and I want to choose a rectangle, I can just click on rectangle and start drawing the gate to the size that I want. Okay, I'll call this my grams. These gate labels, you can obviously move them to a more convenient spot on the plot. Here's another little trick. If your plots are kind of small and you have trouble seeing the boundaries of where you want to place the gate, you can right-click on the plot and click on Maximize there in the pop-up window. And then your plot will temporarily become a little bit larger, and then you can more easily draw your gate. So let's say I want to draw a polygon gate around my lymphocytes here. Okay, so to close the gate, you can either click on the original vertex or you can click the space bar, and that'll close the gate for you. Type in a name and choose the color that you want it to be. All right, and then if you want the plot to go back to its original size, just right-click on the plot and click on Restore towards the bottom of the pop-up window there. Okay, there's other gate shapes here, such as ellipse and freeform. I also want to show you that you can get these gate shapes by right-clicking on a plot and going to Create Gate from the pop-up menu. Those are all available there. So usually in FCS Express, there's more than one way to do any given action. So you can do whatever feels most comfortable for you. So let's create, I'm going to skip ellipse. Let's create a freeform gate. This is sort of like a drawing pencil tool. And you can start to just, it's like drawing with a pencil in Paint or in Illustrator. Okay, and so we can give this a name as well. Okay, so we've created a few different gates now. Let me show you if you change your mind about what you want the gate shape to be. So let's say I don't want this red granulocyte gate to be a rectangle anymore. I want it to be an ellipse. You can just click on ellipse and then start drawing the gate. And then you say replace, and it should select automatically here in the drop-down menu whatever gate you had selected there on the plot. If not, just choose it from the drop-down menu there. So we're going to replace our grams gate now with an ellipse. Okay, so that's a very nice way to not have to start over, because sometimes you might have so many gates and they even have child gates and you don't want to have to delete that and start over. So you can just use that replace a gate feature. All right, so let's talk about markers and quads. So I'm going to come back to the back gating in a second. I just want to show you how to create all the basic gatings, and that includes markers and quads. So we're going to come to this page over here and create a marker. Okay, maybe you want to create a marker on this plot as well. So you could, just like right-clicking to create a gate, you can right-click to create a marker. Okay, these two markers are now behaving independently, right? So I'm moving one, the other is not moving. If I want to link them, that's very easy to do. Just grab one endpoint of the marker with your mouse and drag and drop it onto the recipient plot's marker. So I'm dragging and dropping it onto the lower bound of the marker on the plot here on the right, and let go. And then when you move one, the other will move in concert, right? Okay, so you can also link markers to gates. And so, well, let me actually come back to that in a second. Now, let me show you the quads real quick. So we're going to put a quad on this plot here. Whoops, didn't quite get it. Okay, and then there's a number of ways you can format quads. So if you come to your formatting menu, just double click on the plot. And then choose quadrants from the drop-down menu. You can choose a standard or the rectilinear quads you see here. You can choose percentile X, Y, or both. And then if you enter in a percentile, the quad will automatically adjust so that 40%, for instance, the X percentile, 40% of the events are to the left of the quad, and the Y percentile, 60% are below the quad, so in the lower left and the lower right quad, right? And of course, this is going to update automatically as you go through your samples. You see that the quads are adjusting for that particular sample. The other type of quads I like to show is floating. So that's very useful if you want to adjust your individual quadrant endpoints so that the lines are no longer restricted to being a right angle. And we all know sometimes our populations really need that, okay? And so, you can also take this quad and do a Control-C if you're on a PC, or a Command-C on a Mac, and then do a Control or Command-V to paste that quad. Whoops. Let me get out of the formatting window there. So let's grab that again. There we go. Okay, so it's really easy to do that. So by the same token, you can also show gates on other plots. So I've created these 3 gates on this plot on the upper left, right? If I want to show those gates here on this plot, you can just right-click on the plot and say, show gate, and I'm going to choose to show my lymphs and my blasts. So any plot that is showing the same parameter pair as the original plot, you can show those gates there, okay? Any questions so far? Okay, notice that I have a couple of different plot types here, and I like to point out specifically color dot plots are very useful for gating. So if you look at these 2 plots on the left that I'm highlighting with my mouse, you can see that the colors have already shown up on the plot on the lower left, right? So if I move the blue lymphs gate around, do you see the blue updating on the lower left-hand plot, right? If I move the red gate, you see that updating as well. So in FCS Express, you don't need a separate backgating tool. You can just use this color dot plot functionality, and that's a great way to see backgating across your entire layout without having to do anything special. Okay, and then you can look at any other plot type you want to, such as the density plot here on the right or the contour plot here, the lower middle row. They all will function the same, of course, for your gates, but I just like to point out that color dot plots are especially useful for backgating, and you can even turn off or turn on different gate colors. So for instance, maybe on this plot down here, I don't want to see the lymphs color, or maybe let me add one more gate, for example. So let's put this one here and call this Hermanos. Okay, so maybe I don't want to see the purple color here down on this plot. So you can turn that off. Just again, go into your formatting menu and go to gates to display. And we're going to say only the gates checked below. So let's say I only want to show granulocytes, lymphs, and blasts. Okay, so now you see there is no purple in this plot anymore because I've turned off that color. So that's useful if you want to use color dot plots, but you've got a layout that has 10, 12 or more gates. You probably don't want to see every single gate on every single plot because not every population is relevant to every plot. So that's what that is useful for. Okay, so let's come back to the markers and quads because I want to show you how you can link. I'm not sure if I showed you how to link the quads. You can do that by coming to your formatting menu. So if I want to link, this plot on the right to the position of the quadrants on the left and have them behave in concert, you can come into your formatting menu. And come to quadrants and come down towards the bottom and click on link to plot. So you can choose the plot number here, which you can find just by mousing over the plot. Okay, so I know it's plot 50. Again, you can just find that by mousing over. You see the hover text there is telling me that plot on the left is 50. So now when I move this quadrant vertex, the other one will move as well. Okay. All right, so that's enough about creating gates, markers, and quads. I want to show you how to apply those to other plots. So once you've created a gate and you want to look at that population in more detail, a nice easy way to do it is just grab the gate from the middle of the gate. I mean, don't grab the border, but just place your mouse right in the middle of the gate and drag and drop that out to an empty spot in your layout. And now you've got a new plot gated on lymphs. Okay, so that's effectively applying your lymphs gate to a new plot. I've already done that for these plots down here at the bottom. These are actually gated on something else, but let me show you. You can gate existing plots by dragging and dropping. So if I want to grab my lymphs gate and drag and drop it onto, drag and drop it onto that plot there. Whoops, it's not quite working with my mouse at the moment. Hang on. Sorry, my trackpad is giving a little bit of an issue, but if you drag a gate from a plot and drag it onto a recipient plot, then there you go. You'll be able to gate that. So if you're having trouble with your trackpad like I am, just hover your mouse over the plot for a second, and then you'll see you can move the gate around, and of course the plot's going to update. Another nice way to gate plots is using the current gate drop-down menu. So that is up here on the gating tab, and it's this current gate drop-down menu here in the upper left. And that's very useful if you want to simultaneously gate multiple plots at once. So I'm just going to select all these 3 plots at the bottom, and I'm going to gate them all simultaneously on blasts, okay, or maybe lymphs. And here's a third way I'm going to show you how to apply gates, because it kind of takes us into the next section. Come over to the Insert tab and choose Gate View. That's this third button from the left. I'm hovering my mouse over it. And then click on an empty spot on your layout to insert that object. So the Gate View is going to be listing all the gates that you've created so far. And you can use this Gate View to gate plots as well. So if I want to gate this histogram down here on blasts, I can just grab my blasts gate from the gate view and drag and drop it onto blasts. Okay, and then, you know, of course, like everything else in FCS Express, it's going to update in real time as you move your gate around. Okay, do I have any questions so far? All right. Another thing I like to point out about the gate view is it's an interactive legend of your gates. So if you change your mind about how you've named the gates, maybe you want to rename grands, just double click on the grands there in the gate view and then type in the new name, and then you can even change the color if you wanted to and say okay. Okay, and now you see this has been updated. Whoops. Getting a little bit of a refresh issue on my Mac here. Yeah, there you go. Okay, you can also redefine the gating hierarchy here, and this will probably make sense if I put in one more level in my gates. So let's just quickly create some gates on my CD4 and my CD8 populations down here. So these will be our CD8. And these are CD4. Okay, so right now we've created these CD8 and CD4 gates, and they're a child of lymphs because this parent plot here is gated on lymphs, right? But if you change your mind about where you want those gates to be in your hierarchy, you can just grab them and drag and drop them to, for instance, blasts. And now they are a child of blasts. Okay, so it's very easy to do that in FCS Express. I'm just going to undo that because I don't really want to. And you know, let's turn back on some gate colors here because there's something else I want to show you. So we just have all the colors showing really easily. Or you know what, let's only look at these ones for now. Or you know what, let's do all gates except those checked below. So let's check off everything. Whoops. Okay. So we're right now looking at the pink and the blue on this lower left plot. So remember I mentioned I was going to show you combination gate matrices and combination gates. Let's create one more gate here so that it's going to be easier for me to show you this. And I'll call this non-CD4 CD8. All right, so you know, let's say you wanted to create a gate on let's a combination of CD8 and CD4, okay? So you can do that on the fly. Just right click inside of your gate view and click add combination gate there. And we'll call this our combination gate CD4 plus CD8. And here's where you can start typing in the formula. So I'm gonna start typing CD4. You see you have an autofill there. And now you have a number of different Boolean operators available to you. So you have and again, autofill works, or you have exclusive or, okay? Also there's not, okay? Let's just do or, and now you can start typing the name of the other gate. Okay, and I'll just call that black. So then you can grab this gate and put it up as a child of lymphs as well. So let's just see, can you use this gate as a regular drawn gate? Yes, you can. You can, for instance, grab this gate here, or you know what, let me duplicate the plot so we can look at them side by side. Whoops. Okay, so we're looking at these two plots here at either end of this row. So I can grab this combination gate and drag and drop it to this plot down here. And now you see that this plot on the lower right is gated on that combination gate, CD4 plus CD8, okay? Of course, you can move these gates around and it's gonna update. So all those Boolean combinations will work for you. If you want to do something a little bit more efficient, so I'm going to delete that gate. Let's say you wanted to know all the Boolean combinations because you're doing a little more of a complicated immunophenotyping experiment. Simply select all the gates here in your gate view. I'm doing a shift click. These are the ones that I want to create my combination gate matrix on. Right click and say add combination gate matrix. Okay, and now you have, whoops, all the combination gates automatically created by FCS Express. So if I zoom in, it'll probably be a little bit easier for you to read this font. Okay, so do you see that we have the triple positives here at the very top, and down here at the bottom we have the triple negatives, and then we have everything in between. This is 8 combinations because we have 3 gates that we created the matrix on, and 2 to the 3 is 8. So I can also grab these, you know, and make them a child of lymphs like we did before. And these are going to work just like normal. So for instance, let me grab my my triple positives here and gate this lower right plot on that. And you know, there's no whoops. There's no events in this plot right now. Whoops. Okay. Oh, hold on, sorry, those are not my triple positives. Where are my triple positives? That's fine. Yeah, here they are in the middle. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my triple positives. And so there's no events because there are no events that, there is no area where the 3 gates intersect. But if I were to redraw my gate, Okay, so now you see there are some events there that are in all three. So you can see, for instance, right here under the CD4 label, let me highlight them. It's probably a little bit hard for you to see in the webinar, but there's a few dots there, okay? And that's going to allow you to see those populations from your combination gates. You know, I don't really want to get into statistics here, but since we're on this subject of combination gates, when you are looking at your statistics windows, you'll be able to see the results from those combination gates in here. In your statistics window. So this is the row I'm referring to when I said there are a few events. It's this row here where you have 10 events now in that plot in the triple positives, okay? And so you can report these out to Excel or just look at them on your layout, make bar plots, all the kinds of things you can do in FCS Express. They are regular gates, okay? You know, I just realized there's one more thing I wanted to show you. I totally forgot. When I was on the markers and quads, you do want to sometimes link your markers and quads to gates. So for instance, I can right click on, for these markers, I can right click on the plot and say convert marker to gate and say convert and link, and I'll say M1 gate, okay? And now, for instance, if I gate these two plots on the bottom on my M1, then if you resize the marker, those plots on the bottom are going to resize in tandem, okay? And you can do the same thing with your quadrants. If you want to use these quadrants downstream in other plots, just right click on the plot and say convert quads to gates. I'm not going to go through it because it's the same procedure, but it is there for you. Okay, so we have concluded the first section. Let me hop back to our summary and talk about, just give you a heads up what we're going to talk about next. Okay, so we have done this first section, so if you have any questions, please let me know. Just feel free to type those in as they come up. We are keeping an eye on that chat window. For those of you who came in late, you can enter in your questions here where it says enter question for staff in the GoToWebinar control panel. Okay, so let's move on to the next section, which is data-specific gates. Remember, I said that this is useful for when you have samples showing on your layout simultaneously, multiple samples, and you need to create specific positions for a given gate for individual samples or for groups of samples. Oh, whoops, I think I accidentally closed that layout, so let's just open that up. Alrighty, so here in this experiment, if I zoom in, be a little bit easier for you to see. We have several samples. You can see the plot titles. We're looking at multiple samples at once. And these three plots on the left, they are our controls. And you see the red monocyte gate on them. And then these two plots on the right, they are our treated. And probably you can see this plot in particular, the monocytes gate, it doesn't fit the population as drawn, right? So if I try to adjust it, you know, I can adjust it, but then all the samples are moving, the gates on all the samples are moving, and that's not what I want to do. I just want to adjust it for that sample. Okay, so how do we do that? So the way to do that is using data-specific gates. So you can just click on the gate and come over to the gating tab here at the top and click on data specific gate. And then you can use these resizing handles to resize the gate. Whoops. Okay, of course you can resize it as specifically as you want. Another nice shortcut, let's say I wanted to make this treated gate on the left also data specific, is hold down the shift key on your keyboard while you resize the gate, and then it'll automatically become data specific. So you see now I can move these gates around and they're not affecting any of the other samples, right? Okay, so let's say, you know, and of course these are still the control gates down here. they're still behaving in concert with each other as expected. So let's say I want to create a data-specific gate group. What I mean by that is I want the gating positions for my treated, these two plots on the right, to be the same position, at the same position. I want them to move in concert with each other. So the way to do that is come over to your gate navigator here on the View tab. This is one of those dockable windows that you can put over here on the left to get it out of the way. And expand the hierarchy, and then you'll see that FCS Express knows that we've already created a couple of data-specific gates. They're right here under the data-specific gates node under the mono, the red monos gate. So let's say I want the gate to be based on this one on the right, and this is sample 44693017.fcs. Okay, so I'm going to click on that one first and do a command click, or if you're on a PC, a control click to select the other sample. And then you can right click and say, create data specific gate group. So did you see that this sample here on the left automatically adjusted? And now when I move these around, they're moving in concert with each other. Okay. You can also promote that data-specific gate position to master, and what that will do is make that the global position for all your samples. So I'll click on that, and you see now it's even the controls are behaving that way. Okay, I'm going to undo that a couple times to get back to where I was. And then if you want to add more samples to that data-specific gate group, so I've restored the control gating position, but let's say that for some reason, I want to add this control here to the treated for some reason. So you can open up your data list. I'd say the easiest way is open up your data list, and let's put this inside here so we have a little more room to work. And so this is sample 44, and I'm just looking at the plot titles to get this. It's 44945035. So I'm going to grab that one. From my data list and drag and drop it into the data specific gate group. And now you see it's highlighted and it's going to move in concert with the others. Okay, you could, if you wanted to, take multiple samples and drag them in as well. All right, do you all have any questions about data specific gates? I think that's going to be a very useful tool for you. You can use it during batch processing, but I'm about to show you a more efficient way to do specific gating positions for batch processing. Okay? All right, so let's go to that other layout. So we just talked about data-specific gates. Now we're going to talk about iteration snapshots. And so when you're doing a batch process, you're iterating your samples through one group of plots, and iteration snapshots are going to be the most efficient way to have specific gating positions in that case. All right, so just to show you how this works, by default, when you go through your list of samples, if you make any gating position, so if I make this CD8 gate longer like this, and I go through my samples, it applies to all your samples by default, right? That's you can change your user options, but the manufacturer default behavior of FCS Express is for all the gates to be identical. When you adjust it, it's going to be the same position for all the rest of your iterations, okay? So I'm going to show you how you can make specific gating positions during your batch process, because in our batch process, we're going to basically create a PowerPoint or a PDF or an Excel or all three that has the results of all of these files in the data list, okay? So rather than having created 5 pages for these 5 samples that I'm highlighting in the lower right of my layout, we just have the one page and we're iterating all our samples through it with the batch processing function, which is really the more efficient way to work. I don't want to plug batching too much because it's a gating webinar, but just to put things in context for you. Okay, so how can we have specific gating positions for each of these iterations? The easiest way to do this is to use iteration snapshots, and you can turn this on by coming to the Tools tab and clicking on, and I'm going to highlight it because it's pretty important. Oh, sorry, my highlighting tools are not working sometimes. It's a little tricky on the Mac, so I'll just hover my mouse over it. It's this button here called Apply Iteration Snapshot. So you'll want to turn that on, okay? And now I can go through my list of samples and adjust my gates. I can also adjust my markers. Okay, I can adjust my quads. Okay, and let's just make a couple other changes. I'm going to make a really obvious change just so it's very clear that it's being applied. Okay, so I'm just making the CD8 gate quite large there, and maybe I'll make my CD4 gate really small, even though that doesn't make sense, but it's okay. I just want the change to be evident while we're going through our samples. So now you see, because again, I have this button on, this Apply Iteration Snapshot button on from the Tools tab. Now when I go forward and backwards through my list of samples, do you see that the quads, the markers, and the gates, the positions have all been remembered by FCS Express, okay? So, and just to show you that this really does work when you do a batch process, I'm going to quickly just run the batch. Again, we're not setting up the batch together because this is not a batch processing webinar. We have a separate webinar for that. But I just want to caution you that if you're using these iteration snapshots, you want to use this rerun button. And let's see if, no, my drawing tool's still not going to work. Sorry about that. Okay, so you want to do rerun. Rerun, this third button from the left on the batch tab, that is what is going to generate your batch process exports to PowerPoint, PDF, etc., with your gating changes for each iteration or for each sample in this case. Okay, run would just be having the gating position as you see it right now for all your samples. You know, you would still have the option, even if you clicked run, to click this option here, unconditionally pause between iterations. And that, for those of you who are using that, because that's been there since at least FCS Express version 4, that will automatically record your iteration snapshots, just so you know. Okay, so you know, don't feel like you have to change what you're doing. That still works. It's functionally the same as iteration snapshots. Okay, but if you've created the snapshots here outside of the batch process, like you and I have just done, you want to click on rerun. And then this is going to generate my PowerPoint with the individual gating positions. Let's move this out of the way so we can actually see the gates change, but it's going to come out in my PowerPoint anyway. So hang on 1 second. So hopefully you all see my PowerPoint popping up. Again, this looks just like your layout because what you see is what you get in FCS Express. So we might as well just, we have the 5 slides, right? Because we had 5 iterations. Might as well just show you a quick slideshow. Oh, whoops, sorry. It's showing on my other screen. Okay, I'll just show you from here. But you see, you know, this is the original gating position. If I come to my next sample, you see that I've made the CD8 gate not as wide. And I'll go to the next sample, slide 3. You can see, I think I resized the marker on that one. Yep, this marker looks more narrow. And slide 4, I made the CD8 gate quite large. Also, the quadrant position was changed a little bit. All right, so do you all have any questions about that? I just wanted to prove to you that those iteration snapshots are going to come through in your batch. And this tools button here, apply iteration snapshot, that's very important to keep pressed. When you close and reopen your layout, As long as you've saved your layout, then this apply iteration snapshot will automatically be pressed on subsequent reopenings of the layout. So don't worry, your gates will be remembered. All right, do you all have any questions so far? Please feel free to enter those in. Okay, so I think we do have time to show you the couple of other things. So remember I said I would like to show you these last two items on the agenda. Let's start with gate heat maps because we're on that layout right now. So gate heat maps is a nice way to sort of see what's going on with a given parameter across all your samples in one plot. So let's hop back to that layout we were just on and I'll show you how that works. So that's a new plot type in FCS Express 7. It's very cool. And I encourage you all to start using it. We do have information on it in our manual, but I'm going to just show you a real quick way to get started with it. So remember, in this layout, we have a few gates already. So we're going to look at the gate heat map for this layout. So we've got a lymphs gate and, this is CD3, CD19, CD4, CD8, and a blasts gate, okay? So let's put this on a new page. And to get to your gates heat map, you'll come to the Insert tab and click on Gates Heat Map here, all the way to the right, and just draw it to the size you want. All right, and if you have your advanced data dialog, you can just click here to data list and choose the sample you want to look at to start with. So what parameter are we interested in looking at? Why don't we look at our CD8s, and we can look at the lymphs gate as the population we're interested in. So I'll say okay. So what do we have here? This is across the top here, and you know what? I'm going to make these fonts a little bit larger, more appropriate for a webinar. Okay, looks like I didn't quite. Okay, I apologize. I'm not able to make these bigger at the moment. But so at the class across here at the top, we have the different gate names, and so these are the lymphs, the CD3, the CD19, the CD4, the CD8, and the blasts. And here on the bottom, it's telling us what parameter are we looking at. So right here, we're looking at the CD8 arithmetic mean. Probably if I zoom in, it'll be a little bit easier for you to see. There we go. All right, so you can look at, any population, any statistic you want, but the color is basically telling us the fluorescence intensity in this channel, CD8, going across all these gates here at the top. All right, so why don't we put in, we can put in a legend. Okay, so it's going from low CD8 fluorescence value, and that's the green, min, and so gates with a high CD8 fluorescence value are colored in red, max. Okay, you can change the color levels here to anything you want. So rather than green, red, maybe I want to look at rainbow, okay, or maybe red gradient. You can change to logarithmic, whatever you want. Okay, let's keep this on. Let's just keep it on green, red. Okay, and it's going. The coloring is going from mean plus or minus standard deviation. So if you feel like there's not quite that much variation in your data, you could of course decrease the number of standard deviations. You'll start to see the coloring come out more. Okay, maybe I want to change it to 1.5, something like that. right? But the very cool thing is you can now look at the results across all your samples. So I'm going to grab the other 4 samples from my data list and just drag and drop them onto this Gates heat map. And now I see what is the CD8 level, fluorescence level across all these gates, i.e. CD3, CD19, CD4, CD8 blasts, for all of these samples going down here on the y-axis, right? So you can change the statistic. I forgot to show you that. So, you know, you can keep it on CD8 if you want to, or look at any of these other parameters. Let's just keep it on CD8. But I just want to show you can instead change it to median or, you know, geometric mean, whatever you want. Okay, let's leave it on median. Okay, and then you can even look at radius parameter. I like to put it on number of events, and this is showing you the size of each well, if you will, within the Gates heat map reflects the number of events in each of these gates for each of these samples, okay? So since I'm here, I'm gonna come to gates to display, and I don't think this bead exclusion gate is really relevant, so I'm gonna say all gates except those checked below, and maybe I don't even need to look at lymphs either. I just wanna look at these gates here, okay? So it's very, very nice. This is going to update as you move your gates, or if you were to add more samples into the data list, you could add those in too. All right. So if you have any questions about that, let us know. And the last thing I want to show you before we conclude today's webinar is how to make well gates on heat maps. So I have a layout that's already open. Again, you know, heat maps are very useful for if you're acquiring multi-well plates and you want to look at them as such in FCS Express, or for those of you who are, maybe you're not acquiring multi-well plates, but you are using the spade transformation. Spade transformations are shown in heat maps also. So what I'm showing you about well gates right now will apply to working with spade plots, although this is not spade data right here that I have in front of me. Okay, but just to show you for the sake of completeness, I'm not going to get really into depth here into plate heat maps, sorry, into multi-well plate high content heat maps here, but I do want to show you how to create the well gates. So you can click on, right click on the plot and say edit gate, or rather create gate. So we'll create a well gate, and then just draw your cursor around the events that you want to include. So I'll call this my well gate new. Okay, if you want to add individual wells that are discontiguous to this original region, just hold down on a Mac the command key and click on those wells. If you're on a PC, it would be a control key on your keyboard. Okay, so this is now your well gate. Okay, and you know you can apply that gate just like you would to any other plot. So I'm gonna, this plot here on the lower left, if I want to apply the well gate to that plot, I can just select it here, and now those are those events there. All right, so that's very useful. By the way, you can also get the well gates here from the gating tab, same thing. Remember in FCS Express, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Okay, so let's hop back to our summary because we'll review what we learned today. So hopefully you learned in FCS Express, you have robust tools for creating gates, markers, and quads. You can create them, show them on any plot. You can do linked markers and quads. You can create combination gates by typing in Boolean formula, or you can do combination gate matrix if you want to have all the Boolean combinations. You can change the gate hierarchy, you can replace gates at will, and none of this requires that you redo anything you've done. It's very easy to make these adjustments to your existing work. I showed you 2 ways to have individual gate positions for particular samples or particular groups of samples, and those are data-specific gates, which is really useful when you have multiple samples showing on your layout simultaneously, but they can also be used during batching if you like to work that way. Iteration snapshots are specifically for when you set up your layout to batch process. I think that that's the more efficient way to do that. to do specific gating positions, but like I said, data-specific gates will work either way. And then lastly, I showed you gate heat maps, which is a new plot type in FCS Express that allows you to quickly interrogate the expression of a particular parameter across all your samples and across all your gates. And then we looked at how to create well gates on heat maps. All right, so thank you so much for joining me today. It's really been a pleasure having you. Before you go, I just wanted to point out some of the help resources. So when you open up FCS Express, whether you've got a purchased version or the demo, if you click on Video Guide, this will open up, if you're on a PC, it'll open up a pop-up window with a bank of short videos that are no more than 3 minutes long. If you're on a Mac, it's going to open it up in a browser, like you see right here. But you can come down here to this short overview section and just click on more videos, and you'll see, for instance, this one right here is very relevant, creating and using gates. Okay, that is going to be a 2 or 3 minute video that just shows you how to create and use gates. I think we also have one about data specific gates. Let's just see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is, data specific gates, right here in the upper left of my browser. So I encourage you to use that resource. It's very useful to refresh your memory. And then you can also find help from within the software if you go File, to the File tab here. Oops. I'm having a little bit of a freezing issue on my computer. I apologize. Oops, I'm sorry, my computer is freezing at the moment. But basically, if you go to the File tab, Help in FCS Express, and you'll be able to get to the tutorial or the contents. You can also search for that online. So if you just come to our website and come down to the bottom and click on Quick Start Guides, this will be a really useful, you might have to log into your account on Lenovo software to access that, but you'll be able to find the manual online there too. But basically, I lastly wanted to point out, if you don't have FCS Express and you're thinking of trying it out, you can click on the free demo here. Just go to lenovosoftware.com or fcsexpress.com and click on the free demo, and that will take you to a page where you can sign up for a free 30-day demo to evaluate FCS Express with your own data. Okay, so I do see a question coming through about iteration snapshots. So you can take a specific iteration snapshot and apply it to other samples just by using the clipboard. So remember when I used my mouse to click inside of a plot that had a quadrant, and then I did a Command-C on a Mac or Control-C on a PC to copy, and then I pasted that to another plot to have the exact same quad position. So you can do the same thing with iteration snapshots. So let's say you're on iteration 4 of your layout, and you want to then take that particular gating position for your granular sites and put it into iteration 6. You can use the clipboard, the Controller Command-C and Controller Command-V to do that as well. Okay, so thank you so much. This webinar will be archived online on YouTube and on our website. Just keep your eye out in your email inbox. You'll get an email within a couple of days letting you know where to go to get that. And just feel free to contact us if you'd like some help via screen share, applying any of these functions to your own layout. We're glad to set those up with you, whether you're an existing customer or a prospective customer. Thank you so much and have a wonderful afternoon.